And I want to welcome you to the June 24th meeting of the Douglas County Board of County Commissioners. We are doing this meeting over Zoom again, and just to clarify for the public, since there was an extension of phase 3, throughout phase 3, the Douglas County Commission was meeting over Zoom for best practices of social distancing, and have decided to continue that when that was extended through July 5th. Because of that, I'm going to review how we do our meetings over Zoom in this time of social distancing. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share the screen with the call. Participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet. All participants will be entered into the meeting with their audio muted, meaning the commission and the public will not be able to hear you. Presenters will be muted when the agenda item comes up. We ask that all online presenters use good conference call etiquette and mute the line when not speaking and introduce themselves each time they speak. If you have public comment on an agenda item or under regular public comment, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Staff will call on you and unmute you. We ask that speakers give their name and address for the minute. The county does reserve the right to shut off the microphone and remove any speaker from the meeting if they're vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. Chat function has been disabled, and a recording of this meeting will be available on our website. Just to let everybody know, we have a consent agenda item, a regular agenda item. We usually talk about appointments, and then we have general public comment. Commissioner DeRusso did have just a quick comment before we get started here.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Just, I don't want to appear rude or like I skipped out or anything. I may have to, I've got a family issue. I may have to take a call. If I do that, I will just stop my video, and of course we'll be on mute, but I will still be here listening best I can to with both ears. But I just didn't want anybody to get confused if they see my video go blank. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner DeRusso. On our agenda, our first consent agenda item, we have one item. Would any member of the commission like to remove that item for discussion?
I would not.
Okay. Would any member of the public like to remove that item for public comment? Just for those who haven't been part of our meetings before, or maybe at the courthouse, we check in with Jill at the courthouse to see if anybody has any public comment item or would like to pull this from the consent agenda item. Jill, do we have anybody there?
We don't. We don't have any regarding to the items on our consent agenda that's listed up there. We'll get to public comment soon. Sorry, I have questions in the audience as well.
Yeah, Joe, we might need to mute I know we're putting it on the screen there. We're getting some feedback. So before we get to public comment, we want to get that kind of resolved. And then Jill, it says Jill Jolliker is also online. So I don't know if you're doing double duty. Are you seeing anybody online? 2 people online for this item.
No, there's nobody online.
Great. Okay, super. Thanks, Jill. Okay, so I would entertain a motion for our consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Passes 3-0. On to our regular agenda item. And this is opportunities to manage the jail population. And it's an update from Mike Brower. And I see Mike is here joining us online. So we'll turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, commissioners, for your time this evening. As you're aware, the commissioners has issued a challenge to our criminal justice leaders and to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to address the urgent needs of the jail population regarding how COVID-19 has changed how we have to operate the facility. And so I'll remind you of the work group that has been meeting every week or every other week minimum is the Honorable James McCabery of the Kansas 7th Judicial District, the Honorable Scott Miller, City of Lawrence Municipal Court, Sheriff Ken McGovern, District Attorney Charles Branson, from the Lawrence Police Department, Captain Trent McKinley. There's our county managers, Sarah Polinsky. From the Sheriff's Office, also Under Sheriff Bunting, Captain Wes Haug, Captain Stacy Simmons, and then also Dr. Matt Cravens, the data analyst with the CJCC, and myself. So we gave you an update, actually kind of an impromptu update a little bit last week of where we're at. We asked the group to put together a more formal update for this meeting for you. And so, and this will be posted with the agenda packet. Some of the things that we're working on, and these are goals to immediately impact. Yes, ma'am.
Could I ask that we had some technical challenges. I'm trying to manage the audio in the room and not having too much feedback. So could you back up just to back up real quickly and repeat, introduce the issue for the folks in the audience?
Oh, absolutely. So once again, this is an update from to the Commissioner's challenge to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and to the primary criminal justice leaders in Douglas County to address the jail population as we deal with the impacts of COVID-19 and the change in the stay-at-home orders. So the work group I just wanted to update folks on from the Kansas 7th Judicial District is Judge James McCabery, from the City of Lawrence Municipal Court, Judge Scott Miller, Sheriff Ken McGovern, District Attorney Charles Branson, from the Lawrence Police Department, Captain Trent McKinley. The work group also includes County Manager Sarah Polinsky. Additional members, when it comes to from the jail administration of the Sheriff's Office, are Under Sheriff Gary Bunting, Captain Wes Haug, Captain Stacy Simmons, and then also from the Coordinating Council, Dr. Matt Cravens, the data analyst. So just an update on things that we're currently working to put into place. I've kind of broken these out into categories. So just for the overall justice system, the work group members have agreed to explore the creation of a criminal justice data analyst, or I'm sorry, data collaborative. The idea is that we have multiple data systems that are tracking our persons in our criminal justice system and criminal justice system usage. And so we feel that it's critical to, for each manager of those databases to get together on a regular basis to understand what works, how information is inputted, and how that information can be shared jointly and reports can be created jointly. So Lawrence Police Department, Emergency Communications, the Sheriff's Office, the District Court, the Municipal Court, Criminal Justice Services, and the District Attorney's Office will work together to make up this collaborative. And just today, in conversations with the Kansas 7th Judicial District, we're going to have a one of our judges actually lead this group. You know, I think the legwork will be done by Dr. Matt Cravens, but we'll have a judge that will oversee this work group, which is a good idea because that makes sure that we have access to the state's data. Then the work group has decided to work together to explore and look at considerations around creating a public defender's office here in Douglas County. It's our understanding from talking to experts over the last 5 years that this would help improve our court efficiency. And so we have made this a area that we want to focus our efforts on. And I'm sure we'll be bringing you into those conversations as they proceed. So, And I also want to acknowledge Captain Stacy Simmons is on the Zoom call. So she's prepared to chime in at any point you want, Captain, but also answer questions about how the jail is functioning correctly. Next category we have is the District Attorney's Office. So the District Attorney is really working to trying to increase efficiency and work with Defense Counsel to solve what we consider to be simple, low-level cases in a quick and efficient manner. The whole goal there is that allows prosecutors and judges to have more time to work on complex cases and improves case calendars. And one method of doing that is that the DA's office will be partnering with Reentry and hopefully Defense Counsel to every week review about 8 to 10 cases from the jail of people who were there pre-trial and look to see if those cases can be moved along. Reentry under the Sheriff's Office will be facilitating putting that kind of little data packets together for the DA every week to review. So that hopefully will start here in a couple of weeks. I know the team did quite a bit of work today, getting a form put together with the proper information, and then Dr. Cravens is creating a report that'll be able to be refreshed every week and sent to that team so that they can put those packets together for the district attorney. On the court side, we want to point out that both Lawrence Municipal Court and the 7th Judicial District are really working together to reduce barriers. They're having a lot of conversations about how each of them does things. So we want to reduce the barriers for people that lead to people not appearing in court. Municipal Court has provided phone call reminders, similar to what my dentist does for me over the past year. And just a couple weeks ago, added a texting option. One thing we found, due to federal guidelines, people have to opt in to getting these reminders and have to opt in to getting a text option. And so both municipal and district court has amended their bond forms to, or their bail bond forms to include that. I guess what is the word I'm looking for to include, to have that authorized by the individual to receive that information. So and district court has been providing phone call reminders for about 1.5 years. Text messages for that are more limited. They're based on the individual's request, and someone has to actually go in and kind of check a box, so to speak, to make sure those text reminders happen. We're doing that for people who are on pretrial release, and we're looking for opportunities to expand that to more individuals. In expanding this, what we've learned is that our multiple law enforcement agencies issue a lot of summons and notice to appears instead of arresting people and bringing them to jail. And we do not have a mechanism in place to be able to issue reminders to appear for those summons. So in talking with Judge McCabery, that information is in the court's database. And so we're going to be working with the court to connect that to the database from Criminal Justice Services that provides those updates. So that's an area we learned that there was a gap and we could actually easily address. So another thing to improve case processing is recommendation was made a few years ago to for the district court to assign judges to specific duties. So for instance, to have a strictly criminal docket. So the district court has already moved to doing this for Division 1, will be a criminal docket only. They're going to see how it goes, and thinking it as a pilot project. If we have continued good feedback, then the judges are going to look to expand that to 3 more criminal only dockets. And that has been shown in other jurisdictions to improve efficiency in case processing. So that's the goal behind that. Then District Court has been implementing a broader use of video appearance. This is, and we actually received a study from Dr. Alan Beck that shows that video appearance can actually help reduce the failure to appear rate in your jurisdiction. So, so that's one thing that the District Court right now is going to be looking to offer that as an option to people who have low-level hearings or beginning of the process hearings. As the hearings get more complex and motions are discussed, they do want to do those hearings in person. So the judge is working on a specific policy regarding that. And and the municipal court is doing this. They do a lot of their hearings by video appearance for arraignments, status hearings, reviews, and of course, even for pleas on non-jailable offenses. At Criminal Justice Services, which Criminal Justice Services, for those who are unaware, they manage our pretrial release program, behavioral health court, drug court, house arrest, and then adult intensive supervision probation, along with all of our juvenile services. And so they are working on, like I said, they handle the automatic reminders, so they're working with District Court to improve that for notification to appear. And then they are, one of the pieces that we have discussed with you a couple of times, I think in December and early January, was the idea of providing transportation for individuals who are court involved. And that's the goal there is to remove a barrier for someone to be able to attend court, to attend a probation appointment, or to, if they're engaged in pretrial release or engaged in probation, and they want to utilize Bert Nash, they want to utilize a drug and alcohol provider like DECA or Mirror, we want to make sure they have the transportation. It's not a barrier for them to be able to do that. And even though we have public transportation in town, you know, if you're working a low-paying job on the west side of town and you've got to get on the bus and go to your court appointment, attend court, get back on the bus, get to work, you could easily wipe out half a day of work. And a lot of the individuals that are in our system, unfortunately, don't have jobs where they're going to be able to take vacation leave to attend those kind of appointments. So providing transportation would allow them to do that more efficiently. They wouldn't have to be away from work so long. And so that proposal is something we would like to revisit with the commission to really consider funding that and removing those barriers to be able to attend these appointments. The Sheriff's Office, mainly the reentry team, as I said earlier, they're working with the district attorney to help him complete that review of about 8 to 10 pretrial cases every week. The goal is to cover everyone in the jail once a month. And then they're also working with Criminal Justice Services to provide to these community supervision officers, whether it's pretrial monitoring or whether it's intensive supervision probation, provide information that's being gathered by Bert Nash and DECA and the jail, along with recommendations for treatment. The whole goal here is to give our officers information so that they can support individuals in helping them get these treatment services that would hopefully improve their outcomes while they're on supervision. And that's a recommendation that was made to us here in Douglas County by the Council of State Governments Justice Center. We haven't formally completed that task, and we just think we want to make it more urgent. Along those lines, we are getting ready to pilot utilizing My Resource Connection to do that for us. And so we'll be glad to keep you abreast of how that's going. They have done some, Johnson County has done some programming to allow us to be able to utilize My Resource Connection for referrals and tracking that those referrals were connected. And then lastly, the CJCC data analyst will be working on completing a weekly report, not only to each court, but each court division, letting them know who they have assigned to be incarcerated, what their bond amount is, and how many days they've been in the facility. This report will also go to the district attorney's office for all the divisions. The district attorney assigns the assistant district attorneys by division, and so he will disseminate that to the appropriate ADA. So this leadership group will, like I said, these are things that we are working on right this minute to put in place. There have been other things that we're continuing to discuss, and the leadership group will get back together on July 7th. We also then hope to have an expanded dialogue with the CJCC on July 14th. So at this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mike. I'll open it up to commissioners for any questions you have. I have a few, but let you all start it off if you like.
So, Mike, I appreciate your being here this evening. I know I've kind of bombarded you with email and lots of questions, but I guess my question is, it sounds like everybody is working on this, and some of these things seem like they may be something that can be done immediately. So if they start reviewing cases, I mean, is that something that's gonna, you said 8 to 10 a week, is that gonna start this week or next week? With that, is there the ability that they might see something and go, hey, you know, maybe we can get this person out for pre-trial or something, or get them on a monitor instead of being in here? I mean, is this something that we will start seeing an impact on the population at the jail through some of these initial steps?
Yeah, good question, Commissioner. District Attorney Branson began doing this informally in March of this year. And he would ask Dr. Cravens for reports on who was in jail, and had his staff look up those cases, and they were contacting defense attorneys on cases they thought they could reach plea agreements on. So he's a believer in this process. This is also very similar to what Johnson County, Iowa has been doing in their facility. So there is a little bit of a precedent for using this to, you know, really, I would sum up almost everything that you've heard tonight is all about improving efficiency and case flow, which we think is the primary need for our district and the municipal courts. And that certainly would be a huge factor in improving that. If you think of it this way, there's this philosophy that most criminal cases can be put into 3 categories. There's your complex cases, like your murder cases, kidnapping, sexual assault, indecent deliveries with a child, those kinds of cases that are often complex, have witnesses, lots of evidence. Those cases we don't want to speed up. We want to make sure that every individual receives their due process, and that motions that they filed are followed up on. So on those cases, we need to be sensitive. Then there's what we, you know, the low-lying cases. Certainly misdemeanor cases, low-level felonies. Those cases, usually within a couple of weeks, both the ADA and the defense attorney have a pretty good idea on what a fair plea agreement is. And as you know, over 95% of the cases charged by in district court end up in plea agreements. So the goal here is to move those low-lying cases through quickly, so they don't tie up court calendaring dates, so that they don't tie up defense and prosecutors' time. And then Then there's the moderate cases in the middle. And those cases, the goal would be to set time markers on those cases or milestones and to monitor for that. So this is the path we're moving down, and it'll take all of the partners to make this happen. But we believe I think it's something we believe in.
Great. So you said that the district attorney started this back in March, which the timing is kind of along the lines of COVID. Do you think that that's part of something that played a part in keeping our jail population low the last few months?
It is.
I mean, what did it have an impact?
Yeah, it did. Best of our knowledge, 14 people were released through this process during that time frame. The reason you haven't seen more lately is because cases are not processing right now because the court is closed. But as the court reopens, it'll be very important to ramp up this process so that we can continue doing that at a decent clip.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Patrick, I have just a few questions and a comment. I just want to commend you, Mike, and all the other folks who are doing this work in such a kind of an intense, urgent way in the midst of this kind of a new chapter for the county and all of the partners in criminal justice. It's really impressive to see how things we have known have needed to be done over a number of years now, somehow through this kind of urgent moment and some other changes in our midst, that things seem to really, things seem to be really moving in an impactful way and with real purpose and time sensitivity. So I appreciate that, and for whatever role you've had helping to organize that change in our system. I appreciate that. One group that, as I understand it, they make a huge difference in the number of people who are brought to the jail is our police department. So law enforcement in their work out on the streets, and particularly the Lawrence Police Department, since they take, they oversee so much of the population of Douglas County. So are they part of these conversations? Is there some sense of what, I know this is that's a Lawrence department, and the city manager and the chief of police oversee their operations, but is there a sense of what policies and practices they need to look at or would be willing to look at to help add even more momentum to this kind of big change?
Yeah, so they have been a part of every conversation through Captain Trent McKinley has been working with us. Captain McKinley has also offered up and connected their data analyst, Jason Hodge, with Dr. Cravens. That has been very helpful in understanding some of the data inputs. And we're looking at data together. LPD wasn't at the point yet where they're ready to share, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. I will say the way the data looks, that a lot of maybe what LPD needs to do is keep doing what they're doing. Their bookings were down significantly last year. We need to figure out why, because we want to continue that trend. And so they're working with us to try and do that. And I do think there's other pieces that we will be discussing here in the future. The co-responder program, how we utilize CIT officers, how we connect with the presentation you heard earlier with the expansion of the ICT team. Those are tools and pieces that I think at this time deserve a closer look, especially as the crisis center begins to come online. So there's some opportunity there. We just, like I said, the opportunities for them weren't quite as glaring as some of our other partners, but they're at the table, and I think that'll be coming.
Okay, that's really helpful to know. Thanks. And another interesting shift here has been the kind of opening of the door on the potential for a public defender's office, and so I guess I know that the collaborative is going to start gathering data and kind of investigating that possibility. Are you aware of obstacles at this point? Or, I mean, is that going to be a task that's a year's worth of study, or is it something that might come about pretty, I know it's a hard question, but
Yeah.
I just, what's the advantage of having a public defender's office? What will that do for us?
So we believe that, the goal comes right back around to improving efficiency of case processing. And one thing I know you've heard us talk about in the past is making sure we have defense representation at first appearances where bail decisions are made and pretrial release decisions are made. To do that, we would need funding from the county commission because the state does not pay for that. But if we had a public defender's office, then that's how you would fund that service. And then, this work group we have put together to work on these key criminal justice issues. We don't have a united voice from indigent defense to be part of the conversation, and so we have to pull in multiple voices. And for DA Branson, with this goal of reviewing cases every week to see if we can move them along. It'd be great if he had a chief public defender sitting there next to him reviewing the cases. That would improve that efficiency process. So those are the kind of things we want to look at. We do want to make sure it's right for Johnson County. Yep.
At this point, I think I need to pass a message along to the county commission that the folks that are in the audience that wish to have public comment would like to speak. So I want to see if there's any way that we can speed that up at this point and resume the conversation.
Yeah, I'm good.
You trying to keep them?
No, I'm just trying to. Commissioner Kelly, I apologize. I'm just communicating what's being communicated to me in the audience, and I don't know how you'd like to proceed, but I do have someone that would like to speak. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Michelle's she's off screen for a second. So, I really don't mind holding my questions. We could move public comment up, and then if those folks, Commissioner Thelman, do you have a thought on that?
No, I'm fine with that. I'm willing to stop and listen and resume later.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm gonna turn it around, and I ask that you just give your name, and hopefully we've got you. There we go. Go for it.
So my name is not important right now because my soul is disturbed because I just sat there and listened to you guys basically act like there's no issues. Said Lawrence Police Department is doing a great job to keep doing what they're doing. When we see that, like I said before, the city commission meeting, since I guess there's no line since y'all did throw Lawrence Police Department under the bus not too long ago, that Douglas County was compared at a national rate of Black people versus white people in the national was at 3.2. Douglas County was at a 4.7. And you guys just said Lawrence Police Department need to continue. They're doing a great job, and they need to continue to do what they've been doing. Is what I just heard coming out your mouth. And these numbers are are upsetting to the Black community, the Black and brown community, for the simple fact that if you look around Lawrence, Kansas, there, the population of us doesn't add up to these numbers. So it's almost like, are we getting released from jail and barely making it to 23rd Street before we pick back up? Because how can you guys have these numbers in Douglas County? Also, you guys talked about, I want to go back because these are not even my notes. So excuse me, I'm getting off. But I want to go back to what you guys just said about your solution to the COVID-19 and the overpopulation of the jail, which is mostly Black people. You guys was talking about plea deals, which basically you guys plea deals been railroading our Black community forever. And at this point, you got people that are sitting in jail that's desperate to get out. And so you come to them and offer them a way to get out by taking a plea, pleading to something they did not do because they're desperate, going to do that. But then when this all comes down, then that's when we go into perpetual punishment. Okay, that's what they're going to face when the COVID-19 is over. They're already stuck in your system because they just pled guilty to one charge to get another charge dropped. But my main reason I'm here today, while you talk about Branson, been working on this since March, I'm here for Rontarius Washington Jr. And the fact that he sat in jail 5.5 years without a trial, the fact that the own family asked the DA, why did they lock up a young Black man? We're not talking about his family, we're talking about the victim's family. So when we get to talking about getting people released immediately, I'm talking about Rontarius Washington Jr. and also Albert Wilson. We add him too. We came here calm today, and we always calm, but we are tired. And then when you sat back and just heard what y'all said, knowing these studies that's going on, it just blows my mind. And so when you guys get ready to ask for solutions, I'm trying to figure out why when the Vera Institution for Justice offered to do a comprehensive study for you guys that would normally cost $150,000 to $200,000, you guys declined that. Said that the Sheriff's Department cannot help them because they're short-staffed. But then I heard people are running around at the Lawrence Community Center, the Lawrence shelter, just arrested people for no reason. So obviously there's a lot of time on people's hands. So first things first is Rontarius needs to be released immediately. Like, he should have been released yesterday. Not to mention, he's been in minimum the whole time. He started to get harassed because we are making noise. He was in minimum. And now he's back at medium. He had a job. Now he doesn't have a job. And you just think about somebody who's been in prison, kidnapped all this time. Now his limited time of being out his cell is, he lost his job. He's sitting there, an innocent man. Now he has to sit in his cell. He only gets out 2 hours a day. So while we talk about releasing people because of the COVID-19, which I'm trying to figure out how you guys gonna do that, at what level, when you guys have more Black people in there than white people. So are you guys gonna double the amount of Black people you guys release in this pandemic? Because it's not gonna add up. If you're gonna have to release about 20 Black people to about 2 white people to make this add up and be fair. You understand that, right? Am I muted? Yeah, they're muted. Unmute Patrick Kelly.
No, sorry. No, we can hear you just fine.
Yeah, I have questions.
Yeah, we heard you. I mean, we typically during public comment don't respond to questions, but we may have some of our own comments after public comment.
Yeah, and your first comment is going to be everything you said about 60 seconds prior to me getting up out my seat because I couldn't sit there no longer. I'm about to pass this on to the rest of my people. And please come back to it. I'm going to get up because you're going to address what I said. And like I said, Rontarius needs to be released immediately. And matter of fact, it seems like Charles Branson needs to be getting charged, because it seems like he's been in cahoots, especially when the suspects, who should have been a suspect, has the nerve to tell the mom that if she testified, he would take the baby, and then he has the DA backing him up. That's a problem. Not to mention, he had a DUI that has suddenly disappeared, but then he was able to stay on his visa to come testify as a star witness to the DA. So we have an issue. We need to have Charles Branson locked up for conspiracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kelly, I know we've had somebody with their hand raised in the online audience for a bit. I don't know if you want to go to that person next.
Yeah, I mean, commissioners, I'm fine with just opening up for public comment on this item at this time, and then we can come back. Is that okay with the rest of the group here? Okay. So,
Okay.
so let's go ahead and bring the person in who's online, and then if others have public comment on this item, we'll open it up after we do the online one.
Okay. Mr. Riley, you should be able to speak now and provide your public comment.
Looks like he's still on mute.
Yeah, he's still muted.
Mr. Riley? I can't unmute him. We can come back.
Yeah, are you able to message him, Jill?
I can try in the chat. We might just want to move to somebody else.
Yeah, let's see if there's another person who'd like to make public comment on this item.
Anybody else in the audience? Okay.
Cool, can everyone hear me? Nod, make some sort of reaction so I know, so I don't have to repeat myself because I don't like to do that. Let's first talk about safety. Safety to everyone on this council and on this board is very important. Obviously, you're not here in this space. You care about your safety, and your safety is something that you value, or you would be here in this space if you didn't care about your safety. I'm talking about a national pandemic. Then thinking about the idea that safety is not created by police or by prisons, cages, and accepting that standard as a solution is unrealistic. Police departments are structurally and systemically centered with the interest to contain us, and it's backed and supported by capitalism, which is directly impacted in every experience we have. And the fact that Black people in Lawrence, Kansas are 5 times more likely to be arrested. And those communities are the communities that experience poverty and don't have access to pay bails. And even when bails have been promised, in the case of Ron Terrius, nothing has followed through. And so we're saying that because you prioritize your own safety and you are elected officials, you need to prioritize the safety of everyone in this community, not just yourself. And if anyone would like to make a response to that, that would be great. If not, I will be back at the next meeting with the expectation for you to respond. We're at a point now in our life where we're fucking dying every day. So respond or resign.
Is there anybody else that would like to make public comment? No? Okay. I'm sorry? Okay. Commissioners, I'm not seeing that there's any more folks in the audience that wish to have public comment. I am just going to communicate a message that the folks in the audience are looking for a response. I want to make sure I pass that message around to each of you.
Thanks. Thanks, Jill. Appreciate that. Do we have any luck with Mr. Riley? I know he can. If he could unmute himself, I think it's him. He's muted himself. Is that right? Okay. Just want to make sure if somebody wants to give comment. we can stop at any time if we get that in there and take that public comment, I suppose. Mike, I had a couple of questions and maybe a few comments as well. I share Nancy's request for more information from local law enforcement, and I heard what you said, but it's disappointing to me that we don't have a response on this sheet from them. That is really a next step. We challenge them to think about that, and I'd really like to see that. I want to thank you for thinking about the notice to appear and ways that we could reach out through text message or through phone calls, just for the public's knowledge. That was something that was actually brought to our attention, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, by a member of the public. And these are we're going to need people's help. So I appreciate those people who are coming, providing public comment and sharing their concerns. It helps keep us honest and keeps us, talking, and what are ways that we might be able to do this. So I just want to say thanks for that. The weekly report out for each court and each division, this was sort of a question I had, and you listed the information. One of the things we talked about is reducing the jail usage from each entity by about 25%. Is there any possibility that that report out might include some of that information, like how much we reduced it from a baseline, or the percentage of use that they had? Is that something I hope that's something that's possible, but talk to me about that.
So I've been considering the best way to go about tracking that, because I agree, everyone who uses the jail needs to use it less. And the difficulty is at the beginning of the process, it's law enforcement that's responsible for bringing people to jail. And then for a very short period of time, it's the prosecutors who are making charging decision, who's responsible for that person being in jail. And then very quickly thereafter, the judge is making a determination of whether that person will be released pre-trial or whether they'll stay in jail. And then also on down the line, the judge, the prosecutor, the defense counsel is making a agreement about jail sentencing and how long someone's going to stay in jail once their case has been disposed. So at almost any point in the system, there are multiple users who are part of the decision making for someone to stay in jail. So we're continuing. Dr. Cravens and I are and working with Pam Wejan and with the judges to try and figure out how we might do that. I don't have a good answer for you yet.
Okay. Well, I mean, if just keep it at top of mind, because I think that would be some good information to share. And Mike, to respond to some of the comments we had, can you share with the public a little bit of the work that's ongoing since we released the report about the inequities within the criminal justice system, and sort of what some of those next steps are going to be? I know your group has met since that report was shared out, and I guess I would offer to those folks who were asking for us to comment, that this is sort of our way of comment. I think it's important to hear what work is being done.
So first of all, one thing I want to say is that we're not we're ashamed at this rate. We know that these numbers are due to racism all across the system, and racism that extends even beyond the criminal justice system, that our system ends up being used the way it is. And so I don't want to minimize the importance of that data, or that we shouldn't all be aware of that and make that the forefront of our decision making. And to specifically answer, I think one of the questions was, is how do we get to that kind of rate when, only 4.5% of Douglas County residents are Black. Only less than 3% of our Douglas County residents are Native American. One of the unique things is over 30% of the jail bookings are non-Douglas County residents. So that's a contributing factor in there. It's not, when we talk about these numbers, we didn't differentiate between what county the individual was from. That doesn't change the data. That doesn't change that this is something that we need to work on. I think it's a valid point that when people sit in jail, that they become a little more desperate and they are willing to take plea agreements that they may not have if they had not been sitting in jail for a period of time. And that's an issue our system really does need to address. We've put tools in place like pretrial release where persons are able to be released with not having to post any kind of cash bond, with no fees attached to it whatsoever. And that's a tool that our system could utilize to prevent that feeling of desperation for individuals sitting in jail waiting for a plea agreement. And that's also part of why improving case calendaring and case processing is so important to improve equity, is that we don't want people to sit in jail forever. We don't want to drag these cases out. That doesn't benefit anyone. And I think it does make the system more inequitable. And the only other point I would address is that we haven't yet broken out race data by agency, by police agency. That's something we'll be working on. We've been working with LPD on that specifically. And since we did these presentations to the Racial Disparities Workgroup and to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, we've done the presentation to the judiciary. They requested it. And they are actually helping us begin to look at some of their decision-making around plea agreements and race. And that's not easy. There's a lot of variables to consider. We had an over an hour conversation with one of the judges today with Dr. Cravens, trying to work out some of those deals or work out some of how that data is to be pulled and collected. We're also be looking at the failure to appear rate broken down by race. So those are a couple of areas we're looking at right now.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Mike, and I appreciate you saying that it's upsetting, it's shameful, and we certainly can do better. And I appreciate the public comment raising those to our attention. It shouldn't take public comment to raise that to our attention. We should be focusing on those things all the time. And it's shameful that we're in this moment right now. And I hope it's not a moment. I really do. I hope it's something we continue to focus on. Racism is systemic. We've talked about this before, and when we saw that data from the CJCC, it was alarming. It was really alarming to me, and it was upsetting to me. And the two people who have shared with us today, I feel you were incredibly restrained, in my opinion, and probably more than you should have been. And I appreciate that. And at the same time, I just know that we're seeking answers here. We're trying to do something, and we'll continue to push that system, to ask questions about the system and what it can do better for our people of color. We have to do better on their behalf as a system, not only in criminal justice, but across the community. So I appreciate that. I don't know that I really have. Oh, I did have one more question, Mike. Do you feel, I mean, you've set the standard of 25%. Do you feel like some of the challenges, some of the responses to our challenge will meet that goal?
I thought about this a little bit before we had the meeting today and how I might respond to a question like that. And I think in light of what we've learned about COVID-19 and how that's affected our facility, we have to meet that goal. We just, I think before, when we talked to partners about some of these initiatives, it was, can you, will you, would you be interested in this information? And the dialogue has changed. It is no longer can we, it is we have to. And I think I speak for the entire group of criminal justice leaders when I say that. Everyone has rolled up their sleeves, and so I don't know the answer to that question. I know we have to make this work. We just don't have any choice.
That's all the questions I had. Commissioners, any other comments or questions?
I do. I would just like to address something real quick, because this is the second week in a row that we've had people come into the courthouse and bring up a particular case and basically ask for this person to be released. I understand their frustration, and I also understand there's confusion. The justice system is a mess. It pretty much always has been. It's kind of a dysfunctional, everybody in their silos. And the county commission sitting there in the courthouse, we give our citizens a place where they can come and they can make their public comments, and they can let us know their feelings and their voice can be heard. But it's very frustrating, and I hope that they understand that even though we hear them, as Mike mentioned earlier, we don't make these decisions. We don't arrest people, we don't charge people, we don't sentence people, we don't keep people in jail. These decisions are completely out of our control. I am glad that we offer that space for public comment, but I want to make sure people understand that we hear them and we understand them, and we appreciate their frustration with this particular issue. And there's really not a forum for them to address it, with the people who are actually in charge of those decisions. But I just want them to understand that we do hear them. And, by sitting here in silence, because we don't normally interact with the public, I'm just saying generic, this big general statement that we do hear you, but we only have control over certain things.
So I want to just offer up that I do have a question for Mike, but first, I just want to offer up to the first speaker that the efforts that were made to raise up Mr. Washington's situation and the protest at the city hall that was very, very public and reported out. I want you to know that I had a neighbor call me to ask about that, and I thought at first that he was somehow going to be angry or be offended, but you need to know that that action, raising up that situation, caused him to stop and think. He's a middle-aged white man of kind of conservative values and super nice guy, but hadn't really had to think about that stuff before. And he was feeling convicted and reflective after watching watching that moment at City Hall and thinking about that situation. And so I want you to know that your voices weren't just heard in that room, but with folks who had to sit with that for a while. And so we had a wonderful conversation about an hour long about how we're all learning in this moment to think longer and think deeper about issues of racial injustice. And so I wanted to offer that up. But I want to go back to the request that we use, that we ask Vera to come in and do a study. I guess I want to know, that's been said for quite a while, kind of to rely on Vera to come in and identify areas where we're lacking or where we have issues with our internal systems in our criminal justice work. So my question to you is, I'm wondering when I read the Council of State Governments report, the Justice Center report, that seemed to me, it was released late last year, and it seemed to me that it was very thorough, very current, very helpful. And then add that to a lot of studies that have been done over the years that have identified all of these things we talked about today. We've known that they have needed to be done for several years now. We've just not been able to somehow muster the collaboration and cooperation to really make a lot of progress on them. Some progress, but not this much. So I guess I'm wondering what your sense is in terms of what studies are needed, where would our investment and our time and energy be well spent at this point, so that we're not going over areas that have been studied already. What are the areas of your interest and concern for study?
Well, there's a broad question,
Yeah.
but so I think a couple weeks ago the sheriff said it best when he said, "I don't have time for a study. We need to fix this now." And so I think so. I want to answer your question in two ways there, Commissioner. One is we need to make our system more efficient, and we need to do it now. And waiting for a study, by the time that study is done and completed, we'll be in so much trouble out at that facility, we won't know which way to turn. So on that end, we need to rely on the previous studies that have been done. A lot of what you're seeing was presented tonight are recommendations from Dr. Beck, recommendations from the Justice Center, and then recommendations from things that those of us involved in the criminal justice system for decades now have learned through our own experience that we've been watching this population now for 6-7 years. So I hope that answers that piece. I think on the other end of the question is the CJCC is asking that, is what we have an evaluation work group. Right now we're working with each of the specialized programs that the commission has helped us put in place, and we're putting together logic models and data collection to make sure that we can then have those validated and evaluated for effectiveness. I think on the other end that we're beginning to look at studies of, are we following best practices? Are we having the outcomes that we desire? So that's the type of thing that I think is important. Those would impact the jail population the way that we would reduce recidivism, that we would improve outcomes for the individuals who become engaged in the system, or even better yet, prevent people from entering the system. those are the type of things that I think we need to focus on. But when it comes to the jail population, I'm confident that what all the partners are working on right now is the track we need to be on. I am not opposed to study. As you know, I've enjoyed working on those projects with the variety of different partners that we have over the last 5-6 years. We're turning an application to University of Notre Dame Lab for Economic Opportunities to study the economic impacts of our jail on our community. So that's an area that we're looking to get help on and look at inequities in our system. I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer to where we're at. But right now we've got work to do, and a study's going to slow us down at this point when it comes to jail population.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you. It just seems like we have tons of good information from several years ago all the way to just a few months ago, available to help inform our decisions, but that there's work, on the ground work to do. And right now it looks like we have people ready to dig in and do it. So I'm glad for that. And thank you though it sounds like there are interesting things to be studying when we're past this particular moment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And one thing that I don't remember if I mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago, these Zoom meetings, I have a hard time figuring out what week it is, but we talked about maybe, hopefully, with what's going on in our society and people's call to action and the awareness now that maybe something would start happening at the state level. Because as we know, this all starts at the state. We're, other than the city and some of their ordinances, all of this comes down from the state. So judges have to work with the state laws, the district attorney has to work with the state laws. And while there's some leeway there are mandatory sentencing guidelines in the state of Kansas. There's good and bad, you can look at that. There's good and bad for that. But I did see today that the governor has announced a racial equity and justice commission. So hopefully we can start seeing something there and hopefully some justice reforms and some other action out of the state and I know that that's not a quick fix. It's not going to help us now, but it's a first start, and hopefully we will start seeing the benefits of this. And so, well, I should say, hopefully something will come out of it, because it's really time that the state, we've been asking for years that the state start looking at this. And so I think this is a good first step, but there's so much more they could do.
Yeah, commissioners, I'm sort of watching Jill's body language, and I think we got to get on to probably some public comment here. I think we certainly could talk for a long time about these issues. We've wrestled with them for quite some time, but I want to honor our public that's there waiting to talk to us. So unless anybody has another question for Mike, I'd encourage us to move on to public comment. Any others, Nancy?
I don't have a question. I just have a request. I think it's helping that we are asking Mike to come back and report on progress frequently. And so I guess I would ask Mike if you could come back maybe shortly after the next CJCC meeting, which would be, I think, mid-July. I think it's important for us to keep accountable to each other and for us to be able to explain to the public kind of what progress is being made. So is that possible?
Absolutely, commissioners. And I think it's important that you're aware that you're raising the bar here, your push to our partners is being heard and is an impact. And throughout this long process that we've been on in dealing with the jail population, your level of knowledge and education that you've received helps be a very effective communicators around this issue. I very much want to keep this dialogue open, I want you to keep pushing us as partners to have an impact.
Thank you.
So this was we're not voting on anything. This was just an informational agenda item. So with that, we will move on. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time. We'll move on to appointments. I don't believe we have any appointments unless any commissioners have ones that have come up.
I do not have an appointment, and I don't know if this time you want me to bring it up. Did you see the email from Heartland Works for the board extending our work with them starting July 1st through 2025, the Heartland Works board that I serve on? Did you see that email come through?
Who are you talking to me, Michelle?
I'm talking to any one of you that's listening to me. It looked like they had copied the entire commission, but it's, Mike, Commissioner Gahn had served on it for years, and I've been serving on it. But I guess they have a contract that runs like July 1st, and it goes through 2025. Now, I don't know. I guess what I'm asking is, obviously, I'm not going to be a commissioner after January because I'm not running for re-election. So is this something that the county's interested in continuing to help with Heartland Works and serve on that board? How about if we bring it back on our miscellaneous next week?
I think that would be good.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So no other appointments? No appointments. We didn't have any appointments. So, okay, let's move it to public comment. General public comment is at the end of each meeting, and we limit one comment per person. The commission reserves the right to place a time limit of 3 minutes, per speaker if desired. Individuals may not give unused time to other speakers. As a general practice, the commission will not discuss, debate, nor will the commission make decisions on items presented during this time. Rather, they may defer items to staff for follow-up if necessary. All comments should be directed at the county commission. We've already had some public comment, so I think we understand how it works. Jill, can you take a little poll there for me? We usually don't like to do time limits at the county commission if we can help it, but we want to make sure we have enough time. If we could get some hand raised of how many people would like to provide public comment.
It looks like right now we have about 5.
Okay. I think, I'm not sure we need a time limit for 5. If you're wanting to comment and you're online, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll get you in as well. Jill, could you invite the first person there at the courthouse to come up and provide public comment?
Sure. So the first, whoever would like to come up first? Anybody in the audience that raised their hands? Okay, come on up. And I would ask that you sign in there, please. Thank you. Well, we're requesting it.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
I don't have a ton to say, and I don't know if this is going to do anything at all, but this is kind of in response to your response, Patrick, mostly. You responded, I think, the most to some of our speakers. So you said that racism is systemic, which is true. But the thing is, this and you guys and the commission, that's the system. You're the system. So when you say that you can't do anything, your hands are tied, you don't have the power, the city commissioners don't have the power, the police don't have the power, then who does? That's the system. That's when you hit against the system. The system is working. It's not broken, because when it's working, you have racial disparities. The studies just confirm that it's working, not that it's broken. And something has to be done. I know you can't respond right now. You can't do anything right now, but you can do something. You can do something tomorrow. You can do something tonight. You can text somebody, you can call somebody, you can write somebody, you can research something. So whatever you have to do to get this going without a study, because it's already there, you already have the information you need. She said that. She said you have the information you need to make a decision. You need to do something. He has been in jail for over 5 years without a trial. And that's more than enough time. That's more than enough punishment for something that he didn't do. So a plea deal or a lower bond for something he didn't do is still not justice. So it's not that we want to compromise. We want actual justice for him.
Yes.
And it's not just us. There's more people than the people that are in this room who feel the same way. And the more people that hear about it, the more they're going to feel like me and like them and like the conservative neighbor that she met. They're all going to feel the same way. And if you want Lawrence to, you know, be what you want it to be, a peaceful town, it's not going to be that way if everybody catches on to what's going on in our court system. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick, I see that we have one person online. Do you want to go to that person?
Yeah, let's do that one, and then we'll have another person there at the courthouse.
Matilda, if you unmute yourself, you can speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, actually, I'm sorry. Matilda is my daughter. My name is Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi. So first, I just wanted to say that my daughter's 3, but if she was locked up for 5 years, I'd probably be at every meeting you had. And I'd like to commend the people who are speaking on the part of Rontarius, and that their points have been very calm, articulate, and backed with data. And I really encourage you to listen to them. My further point is, I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, Commissioner Kelly had a really great moment talking about the importance of data and data sharing. And as we've gone on these few weeks, like, we've heard about a lot of different players in the criminal justice system who are sharing data. You can see, you know, intermittent reports from the sheriff's office. Obviously, that racial inequities data probably came from sheriffs and LPD data. And today, Mike Brower did talk about the courts beginning to share data. But I haven't heard anything from the DA's office about sharing data in regards to, you know, plea deals or levels of charges or anything, really, like pretty much silence. And I would just really encourage you to prompt the DA to also share data in the way that your neighbors have the opportunity to talk to you. We don't have that opportunity to talk to the DA either about the Rontarius case or about data sharing. And you probably do have more access than us. And if you could possibly use that access to pass on our concerns, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Nancy, Patrick, Michelle. Feedback loop. The feedback loop that you have amongst each other, including Mike, that somehow decided to leave and not be a part of this public comment, is an issue. The questions you're asking, first off, needed to be asked, aren't good enough questions. And then you're waiting on each other to answer them when the answers are out here behind me. The answers are in the community. The answers have always been in the brown and black community over and over and over again. But then for public comment, you tell us we have time limits and one comment, as you all talk over and over and over again and ask for answers from the exact same people that are complicit in perpetuating the problems. I have a list here of D words, and I'm just going to list some of these D words that I think is happening here. They all sound pretty harmful to me. Dismiss, deny, distance, defer, like you did to the state, deflect, data. We white people love to say we like to use best practices and data decisions. But when we have the data, we still don't utilize any change with the data. Discredit, diffuse, dissipate, disappear, dilute, disengage, diminish, ask for dialogue. When it's a power dynamic, when you're asking for dialogue and you get to listen and then make decisions instead of actually centering the people that know what the answers are. Distract, divert, distort, downplay. You all keep saying you appreciate and you had a wonderful conversation. All those are white ways to respond to black and brown and black justice demands. Patrick, I know you. Nancy, I don't know you, and I'm happy about that. Michelle, I'm so excited you're not running again. But what you're doing is co-opting movement and work that has already been done, and then you're giving each other credit, you're giving Mike credit, you're giving law enforcement credit for the work that none of you would have been doing at all, any of this, unless there was the pressure and demands put on all of you by the brown and black community around you. None of you would be doing this at all. You're only doing this, Nancy, to get reelected. Patrick, because you like to play the white liberal, okay? And Michelle, I don't even know about you, but the thing is, you wouldn't be doing any of this except for the demands and the pressure from the brown and black community. So I'm gonna show up with them again and again, and not with you. Thank you.
Are there any other folks that would like to do public comment? If so, I'd invite you up.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can, thanks.
Hi. Well,
Oh, maybe a little louder.
while we're sitting here and talking, Ron Terrius is still in jail. He's having hours, days, years of his life stolen from him, and we're discussing what we're supposed to do about it. But it doesn't seem like many of you are willing to accept that you also, as a part of this, as a city commissioner, as anyone with power or position, you have a responsibility to do something, to act, okay? I'm hearing all of this deflection to the state, saying that you don't have any power, that you can't do anything about this. What is the point of you? What is the point of your job? Why are we sitting here putting what you have to say first before anyone who's actually being affected gets to speak? Well, we wait for you to talk to each other, pat each other on the backs. Everyone who's actually being impacted is being ignored. You have the data. There's just no time for surveys. You have the data. What are you supposed to do with it? People who are black, people from communities of color are being incarcerated at rates that are very clearly disproportionate to their population in the general public. So what do we do about that? First, why don't we look into these cases that people are asking you about? Why don't we go talk to people of color, people who are black, looking at their cases of the people who are incarcerated in Douglas County? Lawrence, Douglas County is not a bubble. It's not an exception from the rest of the world. This happens here. This happens in your backyard. This happens in your neighborhood. This isn't something that's on the outside. This is a problem here because it's a problem everywhere. And you need to act now, not tomorrow, not when you have an outline. You need to act now.
Thank you.
Are there any more folks? I'd invite you up.
Good afternoon. My name is Sam Allison Natale. I'm an attorney, but that's not relevant here because all the folks behind me know far more about what is happening in our system than you or I should ever wish to. The questions that have been asked are good ones, are astute ones that have not sufficiently been responded to. And I would again invite you to address the questions of the first two speakers. Rontarius Washington should be freed. We've talked about him. You have not. And you seem to be under the illusion that you're not responsible for his incarceration for every day of the last 5 years, but you are. You're responsible for the district attorney, over whom you have the power of the purse, the ability to make directives, and who you have chosen instead to indulge with funding, with support for the failed regime, or as some have argued, the successful regime of Black terror in our community. You say you can't do anything about the state legislature. Well, have you ever tried? Have you ever asked them? Have you ever put pressure on the people who are in those positions to do something? I've never heard of such a thing from you, although the rest of us are. You said you have control over the terms of bail. The options that are available to the judge are constrained by the programs that exist. Because you have not created sufficient programs as alternatives to bail, or have not even tried to limit or abolish the horrible cash bail system, largely because of the profits that it generates for the people who run it, you are responsible for every day he has been spending in jail unable to pay that bail. You are responsible for the quality of his defender. Charles Branson likes to deflect his own responsibility and say it's the defender's fault. But you are the people who hired the defender. It has been 60 years since Gideon v. Wainwright, when the Supreme Court established the right to a high-quality public defense, and here we have never had a public defender. We have a system where private attorneys are given insufficient funds, are given no financial incentive to actually pursue these cases, are given far too high of caseloads. And so unfortunately, Rontarius' case is not the exception, but the rule. And you are responsible for the state of the jail that you have chosen to repeatedly attempt to expand over the clear voice of the people asking you to stop. What rings hollow in these deflections is the fake surprise. You are tinkering with the machinery of death and are shocked to find that people are having their lives destroyed by it. Were it your child who was in the jail for the past 5 years, I'm certain that you would stop at nothing, that you would spend your every waking hour figuring out a way to end this broken system. But you don't. Instead, we are told the impossible response, which we hear too often in Lawrence, which is that the demands that we're making are both impossible and unrealistic, and they're already being done. We're telling you that we won't take that lack of urgency and the deflections any longer. And frankly, I've been unimpressed overhearing the discussion. I think that any of these people behind me could do a much better job in your position. And I hope someday soon they will.
Thank you. Any other public comment, Joe?
Any other folks wish to come up for public comment? Going once, twice. I'm not hearing any.
Okay. Thank you, Jill. And thanks to those members of the public who provided public comment. Now we'll move on to Commissioner or Administrator Miscellaneous. We do have a weekly memo. Jill, I don't know if you have an update beyond that weekly memo that's there. Okay.
I don't.
I will share, I wanted to make sure we got public comment in, so I sort of held some information, didn't hold it, I just waited on it, about some of that state work. I talked with Representative Heiberger today, and I had a really nice letter from one of my constituents talking about a suspended driver's license bill, and I will share with you that you know, there's quite a lot of information out there about how suspended driver's licenses and those traffic stops can lead to long periods in jail or repeated periods in jail. I talked to Boog about that today. That did pass the House of Representatives. I think it was 125-0. But when it got to the Senate, it never made it out of the Senate. He did have positive thoughts that with some leadership changing at the Senate level, that maybe we'd have more success. So that was encouraging. And Boog offered to come speak to the CJCC, which I think would be really helpful for people to hear. And I'll share that with Mike. I think Mike's left us now, but I'll share that with Mike in an email. And I think it would be great for the public to hear to what the state legislature is doing. We're very fortunate to have Representative Heiberger on the Criminal Justice Committee and the sentencing committees at the state level, and I think I'm hopeful, but I also know the challenges that have existed in the past when it comes to state laws as it relates to criminal justice. So I think we need to keep pushing, and I appreciate him taking my call and having that visit today. So I would have shared that earlier, but I knew we wanted to get to public comment there. Any other Commissioner Miscellaneous? Commissioner Jeruso, I don't know if we fully dealt with your Heartland Works request.
We can look at it next week.
Okay.
I have just a couple of things. One is, I think we might want to have Kevin Kelly come and talk to the commission about some remarkable work that he's done during this COVID mess, while people have been losing their jobs and likely are not going to get back into those jobs and need some retraining. So he's created a Rise Douglas County program and found a couple $100,000 of funding that will be used as scholarships for as many as 60 or 80 students to come into the program and be retrained into some kind of job that will give them a living wage. And I think what's especially impressive right now is that he's thinking about those folks who might not normally know about that program or be reached out to. And so he's going to work with the NAACP, KDADs, anyone, any organization in the community that can reach folks who wouldn't necessarily be plugged into the news or some way of knowing about Peasley. So I think it'd be great to have him come talk more about that and kind of keep us up to date on how that program goes. And then one quick question to you all, just to think about and maybe see if this is even possible. But I had a conversation with one of the Fair Board members, long-term Fair Board member who's going to be going off, and he was sharing with me the concern among some of the another Fair Board member who's also long-term and going off, that they were wondering if we might consider extending their terms on the Fair Board by a year. And this hasn't been an official topic of conversation by the Fair Board, but he seemed to think this might be helpful, that since they're not having the fair this year because of COVID, the next year the hope is to, of course, have it, but they will have lost some very experienced people who really had things in place this year. And so the wonder is whether we might be willing to extend their appointments since we make the appointments, and so that they can have their full team, experienced team for next year's fair. So I would just ask you to think about that a little bit. And maybe we can talk about it at the next meeting. Talk to Sarah about it too. So that's all I had.
Yeah, that's a good point with Fair Board appointments. So I'd be interested to hear from the Fair Board, you know, what their thoughts are on extensions, and definitely looking at that, since, you know, those people worked so hard for so many years on that. It's kind of, you know, this has been a rough year for everyone, but if we can find a way to get that experience back for one more year and give them the opportunity to have their last fair that they were working towards, that would be something I'd be interested to hear how everybody feels about that.
I do think we need to have a bit of a discussion tonight and a decision about how we want to go ahead with our meetings. We have budget meetings starting on Tuesday, and wanted to talk amongst the commission. You know, we decided to do this one online because of the extension of phase 3. And I know budget is tricky to do, at least that's what Sarah communicated to me, was that budget will be tricky to do online. But I think tonight proves that our in-person meetings are tricky to do online. Jill, do you have something?
Let me turn the volume down on this real quick. Thank you. Thank you. It is easier. It's pretty simple. I shared that with Sarah earlier this week via text, just because I know that was a concern of hers. But really, we would set it up as a webinar, very much the same way we run and operate these meetings. We would just have a roster of who would be speaking and at what time, and manage moving them in and out of the panelists in the attendee box. So it looks a lot like what we do now. We're doing right now, but more for perhaps an extended period of time. But we've all been together since 4 o'clock, so it would operate very much the same way. So we can make it work, but as soon as we can have some a heads up on that, I think we just need to be more proactive in giving guidance to the departments to just come prepared, and the agencies about who's going to speak on behalf of their agency.
Jill, the last time I was at the courthouse briefly, it looked like there were plexiglass shields getting set up. I mean, had we been there tonight, we would have had barriers between us and with between us and the public. I mean, is everything in place that that needs to be in place in terms of the physical barriers and?
I believe so. Yeah. I think, yeah, as far as I know, yes.
Okay.
My only thought was, you know, on one hand, our budget meetings are different in the fact that these are meetings with our community partners or other departments, and there's no general public comment. My concern was, you know, with phase 3 extended, there's still a limit to how many people can gather. And so, you know, my only question would be, and I don't think it'd be a big deal with budgets because nobody ever shows up for our budget meetings anyway. Nobody likes to sit around and talk about numbers, but the, you know, just coming back into the courthouse, and as long as that phase 3 is extended, how would we control, say if, you know, because it usually takes, you know, if we've got 5 or 6, 8 staff members there, including us, and then we have the community partners or departments that we're meeting with, and the ones that are sitting there waiting for their next turn. I mean, we could easily have, you know, 30 people, 20 to 30 people already in there before any member of the public wanted to come in. So to me, I guess my question is, how would we control that? And with the Opens Meeting Act,
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense to me. And I just want to sort of, I mean, our budget meetings are open public meetings, so they aren't really different than a county commission meeting. And if we didn't think we could be there in public tonight, I think we sort of have to continue this through phase 3. I mean, we sort of made that decision, and I think we should honor that decision. I agree, Michelle, that in the past, I mean, I've only been through one budget hearing, but we didn't have a huge attendance on a lot of that, but it may change this time. I mean, that may be something different, and I think, I just think we sort of have chosen to do it this way through phase 3, and I feel like we need to keep doing it that way. I'm glad to hear Jill saying she thinks it's more possible. So those are I'm dying to be in the same room with each other. I really am. Dying probably wasn't the right word to use there, but I am looking forward to being in the same room with each other, but I understand our community is feeling that way, and we're telling them to stay home. So I want to honor that.
I'm fine with that too. I think it makes for a consistent message and modeling on our part. And boy, if ever there was a time when we all need to kind of try and hold the line and follow the guidelines, this is it. So as long as Jill and IT are able to, keep these Zoom meetings going smoothly, it's not my favorite way of meeting, but it sure keeps us in line with phase 3. And so I'm fine with that.
I do think that, we, and the fact that we got our existing budget online already, we can remind folks that that's a good reference point too, to when you can't be here in the room with us. But yeah, I do think it's a lot more manageable than initially anticipated. We talked, Robin and Daviana and I talked it through with Amy Barnes in IT, and yeah, it is very much, all 3 of us are trained to modify things as need be. So I think we feel pretty confident that we can manage it. Again, with somebody playing that moderator role and understanding who is and isn't going to be speaking on behalf of an agency. But even if, there's a board member, for instance, from one of the historical societies that is in the attendee box, but we want to loop them in for a question. They want to speak about something, we can move them into speaking just like if they were in this room, if we wanted to. We can control all that functionality.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to do budget through Zoom. That's sort of what I'm hearing. Okay. Thanks. Any other comments from commissioners or otherwise? Bill, anything else for us? Okay. That said, we'll see everybody on Tuesday for round 1 of budget. We are adjourned.